Good morning from Tennessee. I had an opportunity to stay with a friend who very gracefully offered for me to stay for a few days. And we arrived late last night where I didn't see the area that we were driving through. And now this morning I can see these absolutely beautiful rolling hills and autumn colours because Today is a Tuesday, and so I suspect tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And we have had an invitation extended to us to go to a relative's house who lives in the mountains somewhere. So I've been told that that's going to be an absolutely beautiful drive. I suspect the temperature at the moment is about 10. And if I just pan down here for 2 seconds, we can see that I have not brought adequate footwear for the temperature that I'm going to experience here in Tennessee, which is supposed to be the coldest Thanksgiving on record. And then I head to New York in a few days' time and spend 4 days there, and it has already had a snowfall. So packing for this trip for Jordan, for transatlantic Barcelona, America, was woefully inadequate. So I'm going to have to go and find some sleeves now, because I've been told that sleeveless is not the weather for sleeveless, which I can admit to. Absolutely. Spectacular morning.
I've come down to Lowe's because my friend's fridge has died and this is where she purchased it from, and she's just going to make some inquiries. But it's just like a Bunnings store, and I've just come here to the paint section and I'm just looking at the amazing colour schemes, and then they have these beautiful pictures to go with each of the sections. Oh, I like this one. So I've just cruised to a Remax office here in Chattanooga for a pie giveaway because it's Thanksgiving in a couple of days' time, and they have got lots of pecan pies and different pumpkin pies here, and so we're going to collect one. And we've got our hot chocolate because it's really freezing, really freezing today. And there's some chocolate chip cookies there, and there's apple pie. So we're going to have something really tasty for dinner tonight. Just wonderful. And so we'll be having some Thanksgiving outings in the next couple of days.
Good morning. I suppose I'm going to be a bit of a surprise to anybody in this area this morning if they're driving to work or something. -1. I've got a few layers on. No street lights, so I'll just walk a little longer. I can actually see really quite well. Very beautiful, crisp walk this morning. Good morning. I'm out for a walk in rural Tennessee. I think I'll be a bit of a surprise for people when they wake up and drive this morning. I want to come out and see if I can get some sunrise photos. Sunrise is at 7:30. But I think I set off a little too early, but that's okay. It's oh dear, look at that. It's only -1. There's no frost on the ground because there's just no moisture in the air. Now up here on the crest of this hill, this house does look a little frosty. Very beautiful. Prepping for Thanksgiving and having a wonderful time. So I'm still on my walk. It's warmed up a little bit. Feels like it's about 0. Um, One of the things that I'm enjoying walking when I'm looking and walking around, seeing the different letterboxes, and these ones are really quite cute. So when the mailman comes, he puts the little flag up. But just how it's got these corbels on it just makes that post just that little bit more interesting. The trees, I don't think you'll quite get the full colours of the autumn leaves here. But the houses are just beautiful here in Dayton, Tennessee. Just beautiful. I'm here in the Ray County Courthouse in Dayton, Tennessee, and this is the site of a very famous trial where evolution was on trial, and for to not be taught in schools because it was believed that creationism was intended to reinforce the family beliefs and Christian beliefs. And in the 1920s, the Butler's Act was enforced. In 1925, legislation was passed that prohibited Darwinian teaching in schools. But then a local teacher objected to, because a local family objected to a teacher teaching Darwinism, evolution in schools. And John Scopes was a substitute teacher here. And the trial had two very prominent lawyers. So for the prosecution, you had William Jennings Bryan, and for the defence, you had Clarence Darrow. And the trial went for 7 days, and John Scopes, after a 9-minute deliberation by the jury, was fined $100, but that fine was never paid. And it took another 30 years for that charge to be overturned. So the argument was not between creationism and evolution, Darwinian theory. It was actually, did the teacher break the law by teaching this theory? And parents, he argued, should have an input into the curriculum. But what Darrow said was basically people should just have an open mind and make up their own mind about what they believe. So the conviction was overturned 2 years later, but the Butler Act stayed in place until the 1960s. And as a result of this, in Tennessee, evolutionism was not taught for 30 years. One of the reflections that my friend has about this site is that outside the courthouse there is 2 statues, one to Brian and one to Darrow. And what happens is at night, one statue, the gentleman for creationism, has a beautiful light on him, and he's very prominent, and he's got plaques around him. I'm out here in the crisp morning air. So this is the gentleman that has the light shining on him at night time, and he's got some inscribing on his statue, and it says truth and eloquence and Bryan College, Christ above all, and some other plaques there that says he's a great orator.
And then on the other side was that first statue that we saw, Clarence Darrow. And all he has on his is attorney for the defence. So we can see which side the actual town is still on at this time in 2018. Very interesting. Another very significant part of Ray County's history is the Trail of Tears, where when the first white settlers came here, there weren't enough of them to disrupt the Native Americans from doing their normal hunting, etc. But after the American Revolution, the government became concerned with security, and the Tallyco Treaty of 1805 provided troops and supply at a junction here in Tennessee, and subsequent treaties with the Cherokee Nation steadily reduced the Cherokees' claim, and disputes with native tribes and settlers continued until the Cherokees adopted white customs. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 led to the forced removal of the Native Americans. Estimated 16,000 Native Americans were sent west by 1838, and up to 4,000 perished in the harsh conditions. So we've come up here to the second floor of the courthouse, to the actual room where the trial took place. Just look at the balustrades and the rich oak of this room, but it is actually just the most massive space. With the same writing desks. It's just amazing. The lecterns, the scribe's desk, and there's the judge's chair. It must have been a very comfortable time. The jury chairs are straight backed, but with a little bit of padding. Just beautiful. The smell of the polished wood. It's just beautiful. An amazing part of history. I'm down here in downtown Dayton, Tennessee, and I've come into the local craft market. And what you find is local artisans, jewellery, painting, photography, sculpture, furniture, have rent space and sell their wares, and it is just beautiful. This soap making. There was an inquiry about the Christmas card making class, so it's just a whole communal environment. Oh, these absolutely beautiful coat hanging spaces here that look to be used pegs from the railway pegs. Just beautiful. Got some bead drops here. Absolutely beautiful little warm. They're called toboggans here. They're called for hats. Hats are called toboggans here. Some beautiful quilting. So if you're ever here in downtown Dayton, Tennessee, you can get your stamping and crafting supplies. It's just beautiful. Just beautiful. Some exquisite jewellery here. By local artisans, quite reasonably priced. $12, etc. Just beautiful. So come on down to the local crafters market. These ones are particularly beautiful, by a woman called Woman Champagne. T-shirts, magnets, coffee cups, just beautiful. I'm going to do this, I don't know if I'll use the recording, but welcome to Tennessee. It's deer hunting season. You just have to accept what happens with the locals, but there's a nice shop here where you can actually buy your guns, etc. So that's pretty okay as well. So I come out to the Blythe Ferry Cherokee Trail of Tears Memorial, and basically the story is when the whites came, there wasn't many whites, but there was a lot of Cherokees. And over a period of time, the Cherokees assimilated into white society. And what I'm being told is this is a reconstruction of the type of building that the Cherokees were living in at the time. And they used to dress in white clothing and they had assimilated quite well. But the whites, as the more whites came to the area, they just wanted to get rid of the Cherokees. So in that last museum, there was the information about 16,000 Cherokees were removed and 4,000 died. So even though the natives of Americans' first people were trying to fit into the rules and restrictions that they were given, it still wasn't enough, and white man pushed them so much further to basically destroy the Cherokee Nation. So the more that you read some of the plaques here at this Cherokee site, the Trail of Tears site, you just become more and more mortified and disgusted at what white man has done. So basically with for a nation that was massive, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that had their own language, their own community structure, their own written language, where white man basically came and wanted the land and took over and did whatever they wanted. And then within, I think this one here is quite good. So it says between 1721 and 1838, 36 separate treaties were achieved through the English and later American forces. And little by little, the Cherokee Nation gave over, gave in continually, but it just wasn't enough for white man. It's just... yeah, it's just a shocking indictment to white colonialism. So I've actually come into the Trail of Tears Museum, which is the hut that, and it just has drinking jugs. This one here, you'd move this up and down and you'd make the milk into butter, so it's like a butter churn. Samples of clothing. Here you had the corn dolls, flint and spears, peace pipe. Just wonderful, just beautiful. These chairs have brought my attention just the way that they're made with the wicker, and just beautiful. Looking through the memorial here, and in the North Carolina group you've got 6 members of the mouse family. You had 7 members of the rattler family. Over here in the Georgia section, you had 6 members of the Bear Outrun Him clan, 11 in the beanstick clan. This group over here, you had some feathers. Oh, you had 9 of the groundhog mothers. The 4 killer family. That's interesting names. Just terrible indictment. So on a plaque here it says that Cherokees were to receive $5 million for their landing compensation and support, but they were removed within 2 years, and 90% of the Cherokees signed a petition to Congress rejecting the treaty as illegitimate, but Congress declined to consider the petition. So the consequences were that as the Cherokees refused to emigrate in May 26, 1838, the army and civilian volunteers began a brutal roundup, capturing men, women and children, not giving them time to... Captors were often given no time to gather their belongings and marched away. It's just horrendous. It's actually terrible. There's actually a map here in front of the memorial with the states of the Cherokee Nation there. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama and Georgia, Kentucky and Illinois, Missouri and Kansas. So I'm just down here by the water, and this is called the Blythe Ferry Crossing, and this is where the Cherokee Nation was basically transported across the water, and it was on a wooden ferry barge that was punted across from the other side. You can just see where those cars are. That's the other side. It's kind of like the narrowest part of this part of the river. An important part of America's native history.